on guys, this is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today I'll be reviewing the Altra Lone Peak 7. So 3 pros that I have with the Lone Peak 7 is number 1, this is a pretty dang comfortable shoe. So this is a trail running shoe that I like wearing for both road runs, trail runs, walking, and for even just daily wear and standing and walking around, because you have a nice width up here through the forefoot for splaying those toes, letting your feet do their things, and the overall midsole gives you a nice level of responsiveness, but it's not so maximalist, so I find it to be like kind of that middle of the ground midsole when it comes to trail running shoes. So for comfort, this shoe is a hit in my opinion. The second pro that I have with this shoe is that if you want a model that's good for like light to moderate terrains, the shoe works really well. These lugs grip pretty dang well in those contexts. So if you're running on gravel, muddy surfaces, or even like sand like this shoe should give you a nice level of traction. So if you're bombing hills going up, you shouldn't have a ton of slip issues with this model if you're doing light to moderate terrain. So I do think for beginner and intermediate trail runners who are gonna be primarily tackling that style of trail running, this shoe should work really well. And the third pro that I have with the shoe is, as mentioned in the first pro, the width of this model. So I honestly have a little bit too much width in the shoe. Even wearing thicker socks, I'm sliding around in the toe box a little bit. Now, it's kind of a con, and I'll talk about that in a second, but if you have exceptionally wide feet, I do think you'll really like this model and the overall width you get through the forefoot and midfoot, because it's not aggressively tapered, and you have a nice level of width down here through the midfoot. So if you have a flatter foot, or if you just want more width to let that arch collapse and do its thing, I think you'll like the fit of the Altra Lone Peak 7. But now let's talk about a couple of cons that I have with this model. So 3 cons that I have with the Lone Peak 7 is number 1, their durability. So on my right shoe here, I'm starting to have that synthetic overlay lip away on the shoe on the medial side of my toe box. And so if you're gonna run into durability issues with this model, I feel like you're gonna see that first around the toe box, because this material is pretty flimsy, and this happened when I was bombing down Mount Morrison the other week. And so if you're doing gnarly descents and ascents, or just tackling some gnarly terrain, I could see this being an issue. And honestly, I do wish this was a little bit more rigid, because it would give you more security and durability with the shoe. So I'm pretty bummed about that, and I'm wondering if anybody else has had this issue, and if you have, drop a comment down below. My second con with the shoe is that if you have notably narrow feet, you might want to actually pass on the shoe. I kind of swim in this model's toe box, and the length runs true for my foot size, so it really is kind of like a width discrepancy for my foot anatomy. And note, I have like a medium to wider foot width, but this shoe I think feels exceptionally wide for what I'm used to. And so I slide around in this toe box a little bit, and that might be actually why I have this durability issue here, just because I'm putting a ton of stress when going downhills, because I do slide up in the shoe. But if you have notably narrow feet, you might want to pass on this shoe and look into something that's going to be a little bit actually snugger or more narrow for your foot anatomy. So just food for thought before investing in this shoe. My third con with this model is that I think if you're somebody who is regularly tackling like super sketchy terrain, you might not get the most out of this shoe. These lugs do a pretty good job on like light to moderate terrains, but I think if you're going to be handling a lot of loose terrain and more aggressive ascents and descents, you might want to skip on the shoe, because performance wise, I'm not sure it's going to meet your needs. And also with the durability issue that I'm running into, I'm not convinced that it's going to last for really experienced trail runners. And do note, like, I'm more to like the beginner / intermediate level trail runner, and I'm not claiming to be a pro here, but I think if you are somebody who needs a shoe that's going to be way better poised for that style of activity, you might want to look into older Altra models, because with my trail running friends, they have all kind of agreed that the Lone Peak 7 is kind of like a 70-60% out of 100 shoe, and the Lone Peak 5, 4, and the previous models were actually way stronger. So you might want to look into those shoes. So if you are wanting to stay with the zero drop shoe with a nice wider toe box, I think the older Lone Peak models will be a better fit for your context. To discuss the performance of the Altra Lone Peak 7, I'll cover how the shoe performs for trail running, hiking, some road running, and then also daily wear and walking. So when it comes to trail running and hiking, I have really enjoyed this shoe from a comfort point of view. Also, I find this model to be a really good like beginner / intermediate shoe, and that's kind of where I am. I'm not your professional trail runner, and if you need that type of review, go find a channel or a personality who's way more dialed in for your needs. But if you're like me and you're just bombing 1 or 2 trails a week, or you want these for hiking, I think you'll like them, especially if you're doing more like casual stuff. So with these lugs, for example, on the outsole, I find them to be pretty dang grippy on most light to moderate terrains and on more casual ascents and descents. So you get a nice level of grip through the forefoot when you're bombing up hills, and then you also get a nice level of grip with this extended outsole when coming down hills. Now, I will say, with more aggressive descents, I'm not convinced that this toe box is going to be super durable for most folks, especially for guys and gals that are tackling crazy terrains where you might have a little bit more abrasion or stress through the toe box. So definitely keep an eye on that. And then also something that I've noticed with this shoe is that it doesn't do the best job at keeping like sand and small gravel out of it. So I have had to take this shoe off on a couple of hikes and trail runs, like empty it out. Now that might just be because of user error or how I run, but this model's gusset on the tongue I think doesn't do the best job of kind of protecting the foot and keeping that terrain out. So just food for thought there if you're going to invest in this shoe. I think this model is going to definitely be better for more beginner and intermediate trail runners. When it comes to road running, I like this shoe for the most part. Like, what I would suggest is keeping your road running mileage shorter in this model if you're going to use them for that. My lugs are already starting to kind of get scuffed up, and I'm being very conscious to not break them down super fast, so that's why I don't like to use these for longer runs. I'll opt for an Escalante if I'm going to do that. But if I'm on the road like I am now and I want to do some small road running for conditioning, I will wear this shoe, and it does a pretty good job regarding its comfort and responsiveness. Plus, with its stack height, it doesn't feel so maximalist to where you don't get any feel from the ground, but it also does a good job of protecting you to where it doesn't beat up your feet. So I do like that about this shoe. When it comes to daily wear and walking, I like this model a lot. So I like the level of comfort you get with it. And I think if you're somebody who is used to barefoot shoes, but you want a model that you can wear out and about on a bunch of different settings and wear it for daily wear, and you want a little bit more cushion for certain occasions, this can be a good option to look into, especially when you consider the width of this model. I don't think you'll have to sacrifice width at all with this shoe. So I do like that for daily wear. And I think if you're somebody who wants this shoe for like running errands and then going out to walk the dogs or hike with the dogs and whatnot, this will be a good option too, because it breathes pretty well and its comfort is on point for those asks. So when it comes to the price of the Altra Lone Peak 7, you can expect to pay $150 USD. Now, for a while, I thought that price point was pretty fair for what the shoe offered. However, with this durability issue, I'm pretty bummed because my model's not that old. So for $150 USD, I feel like you should get more durability out of the shoe. And what I've heard from my trail running friends is that the older Lone Peak models were actually stronger when it comes to durability. So if you are worried about the price point, you might want to look into like the 5 or 6, because I believe those shoes will give you more regarding your investment when it comes to the long-term durability of that shoe. All right, so now let's answer the question, who should buy the Altra Lone Peak 7? I think if you are a beginner and intermediate like myself when it comes to your trail running needs, and you want a shoe that you can also wear for hiking, daily wear, and even some short road runs, this model can make sense. I think it also makes sense for folks with wide feet and for folks who like a zero drop construction with their shoe. I think the shoe can also make sense for folks who are avid barefoot users, but they do want a shoe with a little bit more midsole for certain occasions, because I think you're not going to sacrifice width with this model, and I think you're going to have a nice harmonious fit with your barefoot shoes and this model regarding its width through the forefoot and midfoot. Now, who shouldn't buy this shoe? I think if you are somebody who is very experienced with your trail running and you want a shoe that's going to be super durable and bomb proof, this might not be your best bet. I'm not convinced the toe box is going to match your needs, and so you might want to look into older Lone Peak models. And if you are an avid Lone Peak wearer, definitely let me know which model has been your favorite regarding durability, because I want to broaden my spectrum of knowledge in this category. So definitely help me out there below. I also think you should pass on this shoe if you have a notably narrow foot. I think even if you size down in this shoe, you might have just too much width up here in the toe box to give you a nice level of security when you're going to want that on the trail. So if you're hopping from rock to rock and moving a little bit laterally, for example, you might be sliding a little too much in this shoe if that sounds like your foot anatomy. So when it comes to the sizing and fit in the Altra Lone Peak 7, I think it's going to vary based on your foot anatomy. So truthfully, with this shoe, I feel like I could have gone down a half size and I would have been safe. And so I have a medium to / wider foot width. And so I think if you have a narrow or medium foot width and you don't really err on the side of being a little bit wider, I would say go down a half size. And then if you do like a little bit more room in your toe box, go true to size. And if you have an exceptionally wide foot, go true to size in the shoe. I think if you base your sizing on those anatomical asks, you'll be a lot better suited to have the shoe fit more true than run too long and then be swimming in the toe box. All right, when covering the weight, heel to toe drop, and insole in the Altra Lone Peak 7, for my size 10 model here, we have a weight of 11.65 ounces. The heel to toe drop of this shoe is 0 millimeters, and this model does have a foam removable insole. All right, so now let's break down the construction of the Altra Lone Peak 7. So for the upper in this model, you have a quick dry air mesh. So that's what gives this shoe its lightweight feel throughout the entirety of its build. And then you have some synthetic overlays here on the lateral and medial side of the midfoot, and you have that synthetic overlay covering the toe up here. Once again, this is the overlay that started lipping on me, so I'm starting to have that pull away. I'm a little bit scared to keep using this model on some crazy terrains because I'm not convinced that that's going to hold up, and I think I'm going to have to buy a new shoe soon because it's starting to actually peel up here too at the top of the toe box. So that is a major bummer. Looking at the midfoot construction, the lacing system in this model, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eyelets that go up. The tongue is gusseted and you have an additional loop for security. And then you also have this tongue loop up here to help pull this shoe on, and you also have an external heel tab here to help pull this shoe on as well. The boot itself does have a little bit of structure to it, has some padding here, so I don't think the break-in process is going to be a pain for most folks. And then looking at the heel construction, we have that Velcro back here for securing your spikes. Looking at the midsole in this shoe, you have Altra's Ego midsole in this shoe, and the stack height is 25 millimeters throughout. And then looking at the outsole, you have a Max Track construction, which is basically what gives this shoe like its claw and lug-like patterning here. And then you have some exposed foam here through the midfoot. That hasn't been an issue yet when it comes to durability, but I am starting to have my rubber up here scuff a little bit. So I don't know if you could tell, but you are starting to have a little bit of rubber breakdown up here on the tread up here. That's why when I do road runs in this shoe, I try to keep them on the shorter end, because this started showing more signs of breakdown though when I was in Moab over the weekend hitting some rocks. So I actually think it's probably from that trip and going down and up rocks versus just concrete running. And then you also have an extended outsole layer back here to help give you additional grip. And then once again, this shoe does have a foam removable insole. This foam is a little bit thicker, so if you do have a custom orthotic or insert, you might be able to use it in this shoe and get away with it just fine. The midfoot isn't the best when it comes to volume, but I think for most insoles and inserts, it should be just okay. But overall, that wraps up the construction of the Altra Lone Peak 7. If you have additional questions on this model, drop a comment down below. All right guys, that wraps up my review of the Altra Lone Peak 7. Honestly, I'm pretty hit or miss on this shoe. I was super for this shoe and I really enjoyed it until I ran into that durability issue, because now that's starting to give me pause. But if you have additional questions on this shoe, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And again, if you are an avid Lone Peak wearer, let me know in the comments, which is your favorite model and why? Do you like the 7 or is it a miss for you? Let me know down below. But as always guys, drop a like on the video, drop subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one. All right guys, check out this setup, because I've had a lot of asks for trail running shoes and I'm really trying to make a push to get more into that style of footwear throughout the summer, because that is something I'm very interested in at the moment, and it's kind of like giving me that nice adrenaline rush that I want with my running. But check out this setup where we're camping this weekend. So we are at Moab, Utah. I am camping in Gemini Bridges at the dispersed campsites, and it is just so dang beautiful. It's so cool that I get to share this with you guys. And that is our sleeping setup. And honestly, that tent is more comfortable than most Airbnb beds I sleep in. So I will see you guys in the next one, because I am zonked.